Hey, everybody, what's up? Welcome to the Glosso America YouTube channel. You know what to do. Hit like and subscribe, turn on your notifications, and let's get after it. Hi, hello, and welcome to your favorite Average to Good podcast, Call It What You Want. I'm Jimmy Conrad alongside Charlie Davies and Tony Meola, and we have a big show for you today. Lots to talk about, guys, but first, Chuck, are you still running your camp? Are you still trying to brainwash America's youth about how to be a top striker?
Of course. So I finished the first week of camp. I got my second week, August 4th to August 7th. First week of
shameless
August.
Plug
so,
alert. You still have spots available? So
still
maybe me and Tones?
Yeah. You know,
what are the ages, Charlie? What ages do you got? What ages are you doing?
8 to 16. 8 to 16.
Tell us that Jack McGlynn and Patrick Odjman are going to be signing up for your camp here.
Yeah, we got me and Jack on the sideline for a race. Good old 25-yard race.
I love it. And Big Tones, you're fresh off of a trip to Kansas City because of a 25-year reunion for winning the MLS Cup in 2000. I saw Bob Gansler still doing it.
Yeah.
And how cool was that experience?
Oh man, it was so cool. Guys I haven't seen for 25 years. Heard about some guys and what they were doing. It was great to catch up with everybody. You came after that, right? So you know a lot of those guys that were there, and just fun group to be around. Yeah, it was pretty cool to see Gans. I was worried that Gans wasn't going to go. He's getting older. He's 85, right? He just had hip replacement. Man, Gans went. All 4 of his boys went. He had 11 grandchildren there. Like, I had the whole Gans experience. It was great. And by the way, he was in tears on the field, man, when he went down there, which is really, really cool. But 25 years, I can't believe it. I can't believe it.
A shout out to Bob Gansler. I don't know if he's one of the unsung heroes, I think. He was the coach of the 1990 World Cup team. And when I got to play for him, I was definitely intimidated, which he had a ton of presence, and so for him now to be kind of on the other side of it, and since we've spoken, he's just a lot more emotional than he was as a coach, and yeah, it's hard sometimes to see him that way. Obviously, as he gets older, it's tough to see him getting older because he just was such a vibrant leader, But what a career, and he deserves all the plaudits and respect that he's getting. So I'm glad he had that moment. All right, let's get into the show. So here's what's cooking. We got a little topic called "What did Mauricio Pochettino learn about the U.S. men's national team this summer?" I think we could have a whole show just on that. Who is our most irreplaceable player of the national team? That's going to be a pretty fruitful conversation, I'm sure. A lot of comments I think are going to be coming for. And then lots of clubs are inquiring about Josh Sargent. What is the best place for him? Is MLS the best spot for Gio Reyna to resuscitate his national team career? And what did the Club World Cup tell us about co-hosting a 48-team World Cup? There's so many good topics here. I don't know if we're going to get to all of them, but we're going to try. But first, Tones, I'm coming right back to you. We have our 2 friendlies announced for October. Ecuador, we're taking on Ecuador in Austin, Texas on October 10th. And then 4 days later in Commerce City, which is right outside of Denver, we're going to be hosting Australia. The Socceroos are going to be coming into town. Let's just start with the opponents. Do you like who we're taking on here?
Yeah, I do. Ecuador obviously on a really good run here over the last 14 or 15 games. They've not given up many goals. It's a young team that we saw some sparks from at the World Cup. And Australia, we know what they're going to look like, right? It's going to be straightforward. I feel like it's 2 opponents, Jimmy, and not only the level but the style of opponents that you could likely face at the World Cup. Right. Remember, we're going to be in that first pot and get a top seed. So I think that this will mimic a little bit. And I mean, I don't know about you guys, but my the first thing I'm looking at is who gets called into this thing. Right. When the announcement comes out and kind of what Maurice, because I really think he's going to start thinking about, the World Cup now. Right. Like he's really going to start honing in. So but I like the opponents.
Okay, so Chuck, what I love about our next 3 opponents, with all due respect to Australia, but our next 3 opponents, you got South Korea, you got Japan, you got Ecuador. I love all those matchups, and I think they're going to test us in a lot of different ways. I once I knew Australia, we'd already kind of heard some rumors of it. I hadn't heard Ecuador. I am absolutely thrilled because Ecuador is one of those teams that nobody's going to want to face in the World Cup.
No. I
Chuck's
think
on
they've
mute.
done a great job.
Oh, he's back. He's back.
I'm not.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just giving you a hard time. Keep going.
I think at this stage, we're looking at countries who will give us a challenge, who will give us different looks. I'm really pleased at these friendlies. I mean, the announcements of Ecuador and Australia. I think Australia is low-key a tough opponent. Like Tony said, you can get them in a World Cup, and they can cause problems. So I love the fact that you get Ecuador, who are kind of a blend of tough and tenacious with some quality. I mean, Moses Caicedo, what he did in the Club World Cup, he was phenomenal. So I think that these are really important matches, of course, because we don't have any more competitions before the World Cup. And at the same time, now you got to start figuring out what is my go-to core. Who are the best players when everybody's available? Who am I going to trust in? And that process really has to start now in terms of best 11, the best 14. Who are the 3 or 4 guys that I know can come in and change the game, both from an attacking standpoint, from a defensive standpoint, and from a point of these guys I know are going to add value.
I can't wait to see these rosters. It's gonna, obviously we're gonna start with September in the South Korea Japan game, but as it continues to progress, I'm very curious, and I'm going to use that as a segue because we have a couple players that are coming back from injury in a recent friendly here for PSV. Ricardo Pepi has returned. Serginho Dest has returned. I guess he had a little bit. He came off the field. We don't know too many details. It could be a lot of different things. We're not going to get too heavy in the speculation, but it's just nice that those guys are both playing, and that's going to lead us into another segue. Tones, our most irreplaceable player. Who is that for you on the U.S. men's national team? And I think what's nice is that we've had the Gold Cup to kind of see what our depth can provide and maybe give us a couple different wrinkles. Maybe Malik Tillman is now in your starting 11. Maybe not just you, Tones, but everybody and or watching. And so I wonder, who do you think now? Because when you have a tournament like that and you see the depth, you start to see, we could have really used fill in the blank in this particular or against this particular opponent or in this particular game. And so now having that experience and obviously all the time we've had under Mauricio Pochettino, who do you think is the most irreplaceable player for the U.S. men's national team? This is a big conversation. We want to hear from everybody in the chat as well, or hit us up at social media on Golazo America.
Yeah, I mean, 2 come to mind. I'll give my first one, though. It's Christian Pulisic. Like, I think about how I want to say how much lack of depth we had in the attacking part, especially the wide areas of the field at the Gold Cup. Like that for me was the most telling part. You probably can guess my second one, but I'll hear what you guys have to say. But I'm going to go, Jimmy, first with Christian Pulisic. Just what he gives us in the attack. Yeah, the way he puts defenders under pressure. I still think that he's the guy that you lean on when you're in the attack, when you're trying to make things happen. There's been moments in the national team uniform over the last year or two where you thought, and Nations League included, where you thought, oh man, he's trying to do a little bit too much. But I preferred that rather than somebody that's trying to hide from the ball. So I'll go for my number 1. I'll go with Pulisic.
Okay, Chuck, I'm curious. What do you got?
Well, before I answer this question, I also would like to hear...
He's got a preface.
No. There's no preface. There's no preface. I'd also like to hear who was that player in your cycles. Who was the most?
Who was the player
most irreplaceable?
Yeah.
I'll go that 94 cycle.
Yeah. Keep it. I just want to know in your cycle. I think it's Christian Pulisic. Attacking, I think back to that Germany friendly in Hartford, the coming at what other player could create from nothing from the left side of the pitch, cut inside and hit a banger like that against a Ter Stegen, against the top German side. So for me, in the attacking phase of play, especially because obviously I was an attacking player, I have to go with Christian Pulisic because of what he brings and what he's done for this group in particular in those big moments. He's the guy that's changed the game. But obviously, Anthony Robinson is the player for me that comes number 2.
Yeah, it's hard to go against Christian Pulisic. I think what the Gold Cup brought to light was that we don't have a lot of wingers. It feels like we do because Christian always was around and playing, so you don't really think about the drop-off maybe potentially underneath him, and Tim Weah was on the other side. And then when you don't have Jedi or Dest available, who obviously get in advanced positions a lot, that went from being a strength area for us to being like, wait a second, we're a little thin And I thought that became very apparent during the Gold Cup. And yes, what I do like and what I've seen him evolve into is his ability, even at the club level with Milan, is I'm going to take the game now. I want the responsibility. Give it to me. I'm going to make something happen. And you need those types of players, because if plan A is not working and plan B is not working, sometimes you just need a little individual brilliance to unlock a particular team or to create a play. Maybe it's not a goal, maybe it's not an assist, but it's doing something to shift the momentum. And I think Christian has the ability to do that more consistently than anybody else within our team. But Jedi Robinson's really close, because the drop off after Jedi Robinson is quite steep. I feel like we've got some solutions if Serginho Dest is not healthy, right? They're more defense first, I would say, more than the attacking prowess that Serginho brings to the table. But Jedi to then what? Arfston or Tolkien or, Caleb Wiley doesn't play like Kevin Paredes. He's more of a winger anyway. You maybe have to flip over somebody on the right side to come to the left. We have our depth chart here of left backs. It's Jedi, and I still feel like Arfston's a winger. He probably would raise his hand and say deep down, yeah, I'm a winger. I'm not an out left back. Tolkien, it's just the drop off is steep. So it would be a really, really, really close number 2 with Jedi Robinson. Then you have intangibles too, right? In terms of leadership and presence and how that impacts and raises the game of everybody around them. But yeah, those would be my choices as well. And it seems like everybody in the chat is saying Christian Pulisic or Jedi Robinson too. But what's interesting is maybe I don't know how many years ago when we've been doing this, Chuck, and maybe before Tones was on, we kind of felt like Tyler Adams used to be the guy who felt the most irreplaceable. And I think that he is in a lot of different ways, but there have been some players that have emerged. And because he's missed so much time with the national team, we've seen guys like, all right, they can do the job. They maybe can't do it like Tyler can, but we can at least maybe hold it down in a way where it's not that that steep of a drop off. What do you say, Chuck?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think Tyler Adams was the vocal leader. He was like the real captain on the pitch, the tough tackler. And then I think due to injuries, due to timing, other players were forced to step up, whether it was Weston, whether it was Musa. And then Serginho Dest started to have more influence down that right flank. But Anthony Robinson has, I think, had a quite a rapid rise from the last World Cup cycle to now. Think about his growth and maturity, being the captain at Fulham now, and just being considered one of the best left backs in world football. Pretty incredible. And there's no drop off with the U.S. men's national team either, because we might see a guy play a certain level with his club team, and then with the national team, for whatever reason, it's not as impactful or not as consistent. Not with Anthony Robinson. You know what you're getting from him every single match. And I absolutely love that about him, his consistency, the energy that he plays with, the competitiveness, both from an attacking standpoint and a defensive standpoint, because you need your left back to defend first. You don't have to worry about that. And then going forward, he's just such a problem for opposition because of his relentlessness to get in behind and just continue to work on his service too.
Right. No, I appreciate that answer. And Jedi has gotten so much better. He's in the conversation for being one of the best left backs in the world for sure. Tones.
So our left side is really important to this team.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting out of this.
Yeah. You're picking up what we're putting down, Tones.
Yeah.
So do you want to answer Chuck's question? That's a tough one. I've been thinking about it while I've been listening to you guys too. Who's been the most irreplaceable of your generation of players?
Man, I wrote 3 names down, and I'm trying to figure out. I'm going to put them in a hat and pick them out. Tab Ramos, because nobody did what he did, and we still don't have anyone to do what he did. Eric Winalda, because he stretched the game, scored goals, and actually played as a left back quite a bit for the national team, but was an attacking guy. And then Ernie Stewart, another guy who was an engine. Like, I don't know, man. I suppose it's so hard because we weren't nearly as deep as, like, when we talk about depth charts. There was no putting 3, 4, and 5 on there. Like we didn't have that. You were so, which made everybody really, really important. But those would be the 3 guys that come to mind right away. There were probably certain certain games and certain moments where maybe somebody was a little bit more important than the next guy because of who you were playing and all of that. But yeah, those three guys come to mind.
Yeah, I'm basically stuck on
with?
Landon Donovan and Clint Dempsey. I still don't think DeMarcus Beasley gets the shine that he deserves. An incredible player, and is always going to give you a 7 or 8 out of 10 every time he steps on the field. So I do want to give Bees his flowers. But when you think about what Landon and Clint have done with their numbers and the big goals that they've scored throughout their careers, it's hard to go against those two in particular. But very similar to you, Tones. You kind of just put both of their names in a hat and you just pick it out.
Bees saved our national team on the left side for a year. He was not a left back. Like we forget how good he was as an attacking player, because that really the end of his national team career for quite a while, he was a left back, and we're like, we didn't have a left back. We've been so thin at that position for so long. Like he said, kind of. It's unfair to everyone else to say he saved, but you guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
like
right.
He filled a role. Yeah, he filled a role that was the one position we couldn't find, man, and he filled that role for a lot of years.
You know, I look at that middle tier, like, because after Jurgen, you could probably say Jermaine Jones is probably that player because of how much ground he covered and the intensity he played with. I always looked at the U.S. men's national team player pool. You had to have a few that were intimidating presences, right? Because I think of set pieces. Like Eddie Pope was one of those guys, even though he didn't play with like a mean spirit in a mean-spirited way, he was such a force. So, you know, Gooch and Bocanegra, if you had to pick which one was more of that type of presence.
Who's this Jimmy Conrad erasure, Big Tones?
Hey, no, but I'm curious, Jimmy.
You named every center back from that era, but me and Jay DeMerit, or me and Jay are erasure.
Hey, DeMerit, you and DeMerit were competing for that same spot.
Yeah.
Same type of player.
Hardworking, hard on the sleeve, total commitment.
Yeah. But I think Michael Bradley doesn't get enough credit because he was that one constant. You had Benny Phil Aubrey, you had Sasha Kleshin, you had Ricardo Clark, you had a lot of these guys coming into the central midfield, but none of them necessarily stuck like Michael Bradley, and he had quite an influence, and he only got better. But Landon and Clint were the two guys.
Yeah.
I mean, you knew they were the difference makers. You couldn't replace them because of what they added to the team.
Yeah, they're Claudio Reyna obviously was an excellent player, and it was fun to play with him. John O'Brien was, when he was on, like, unbelievable. And then I want to shout out Pablo Mastroianni as well. That guy it was fun to be a center back when he's on the field, because he probably similar to Jermaine Jones, who I didn't play with, covers so much ground and does so much of the thankless work to make the game easier for everybody else. So a shout out for those guys that are grinding it in the trenches. All right, let's get to a few comments. That Ginger Boy says Tim Howard saved us a bunch too. Yeah, he did.
Well, this is the thing. Tim Howard is a beast. There's no doubt about it. But Tony, you can definitely testify to this, because we had so many quality keepers in the pool. Of course, you stood out. Of course, Tim stood out. Of course, Brad Friedel stood out in 02. But you had these keepers who were so good, but the margins were so small, right? It wasn't like if you went down, you're falling off a cliff. Of course, the quality is not there. Like at the top quality might not be there, but it's enough that you can find a replacement. There was no replacement for Landon Donovan. There was no replacement for Clint Dempsey. There was no replacement for Michael Bradley. There was no replacement for Tab, like you said. So, you know, these are the type of players, like, was there a necessary replacement for these guys? And I'm not so sure.
Well, big example, and is it that Ginger Boy, right? Yeah. He's right with that comment. There's no doubt. But like, what was it, the Mexico game that Tim got hurt before going down to Mexico? I think it was the night Bradley scored that, half field bomb, right? It was Brad Guzan that played that night, right, in that game, if I'm not mistaken. But my point for saying that it wasn't like, oh no, Brad's playing, this is gonna be a tough night. Like you didn't think like that back in the day. Like you just thought, okay, Tim's out. If in my generation with Brad and Casey Keller, like whoever was playing, you really didn't think much about it. So I think that's the point you're trying to make, right, Charlie? Like if Landon was missing or if Clint were missing, like, man, how are we going to make up for the things that they do on the field right now? You know, and that was always it. By the way, I just have to say because you brought it up, Chuck, the Jermaine Jones, Michael Bradley partnership, when those two guys were at their best, is probably the best partnership in the middle of the field we've ever seen. As good as some guys have been, I'm not trying to take anything, but when they were in their prime together,
phenomenal.
That it was phenomenal to watch those two guys work. You brought it up, and I know it's not the topic, but I had to say it, man.
Yeah, I mean, imagine the amount of ground that they covered. Yeah, we don't probably bring up that partnership enough, so I appreciate you.
How about the leadership in the middle of the field? How about just the
leadership and getting guys in good spots, putting out fires before they start, blocking passing from a center back perspective, making the game very predictable for us on the back line because of the passing lanes that they were blocking. So yeah, shout out to both of those guys in particular. All right, we're going to take our first break of Call It What You Want. When we come back, we'll get into some transfer news because we like transfer news because everybody likes transfer news. Don't go anywhere.
Hi. Novocaine?
Novocaine! Novocaine is now streaming on Paramount+.
You're gonna love this.
Oh, you're strong! It's wildly entertaining and an absolute blast.
I'm in.
Novocaine, rated R, now streaming on Paramount+.
Welcome back to what we consider the best average to good show on the internet. I'm Jimmy Conrad, also known as Conradinho, alongside Chuck Wagon, also known as Charlie Davies, and Big Tones, also known as Tony Meola. Now let's get into transfer news. Josh Sargent, resident number 9, Charlie Davies, you're going to take this one. Apparently, he is being targeted to leave Norwich to go to either Burnley, who just got promoted back into the Premier League, or Wolfsburg, who finished 11th in the Bundesliga last season. But they got an exciting new coach in place in Paul Simonis. Which one would you prefer him?
It's a no-brainer. Timmy, it's a no-brainer. It is a no-brainer, and I know you both understand where I'm coming from in this. It's Wolfsburg, without a doubt. He's already had success at Werder Bremen. He understands the Bundesliga. He's coming back to a league where he's had some success. But for him, he's more mature. I think he's in a better situation. Wolfsburg scored 56 goals in the Bundesliga last season. That's about a little bit above average. And for them, I think they're going to create chances. They're not going to be a team that's looking to defend and protect leads, defend first. You go to Burnley, recently promoted, it is, guys, we got to just hang on. We got to just defend first and not concede. The mentality is completely different. If you're going into a team in a locker room that's, hey, it's going to be a big task. Let's just survive. We're here to survive. We're not here to play and think and be courageous and be, keep the ball. This is more Operation Survive, year one back in the Premier League. That's what Josh Sargent will be walking into. Sure, you're in the Premier League. Sure, you're playing against incredible players, and I'm sure your salary is fantastic. But from a playing perspective, from being on the front foot, being in games, it's no doubt Wolfsburg is the place to go. And for competition, I think it's relatively the same. I think he'll get probably just the same look for both clubs. And I think both Burnley didn't have an established number 9 that you'd say, okay, week in, week out, he's our guy. And the same thing for Wolfsburg. So I think Wolfsburg would be a phenomenal place. Plus, he gets to play with Kevin Paredes, who's 21 years old, the American, who's had some good moments at the club. I would love for him to go back to the Bundesliga.
Okay, Tones, before we get into kind of your overall thoughts, let's talk about Burnley because they had a hell of a season in the championship last year. And I think what's different from them when they got promoted under Vincent Kompany, who is managing Bayern Munich, was that they were molded in a very Vincent Kompany learning through Pep Guardiola type of way. And they were just really looking to score. They scored a ton of goals when they got promoted. And then they tried to replicate that in the Premier League and it didn't work and they went straight down. What I think Scott Parker, the manager of Burnley, has done a better job of is making them a defensive unit. I mean, they were unbelievable in the championship last year. They gave up 16 goals in 46 games or something crazy, 44. I mean, it's just a ridiculous. It's a league record. By the way, they had 30 clean sheets last year. That's a record as well. They had the second fewest shots against, second fewest shot on goals against.
Defending.
Which I agree. So that bodes well for them to survive to your point, Chuck, to survive in the Premier League next year, but I don't know how much thriving any of those players are necessarily going to do, especially on the attacking side of the ball. But I do like what Wolfsburg is doing. I love who they hired. Paul Simonis just won the Dutch Cup with Go Ahead Eagles, which is one of my favorite named teams in the whole world, Go Ahead Eagles. And they just always punched above their weight. And so now you got this young, hungry, ambitious manager that wants to put a team together that's going to be playing young, or going to be young and hungry and ambitious as well. And I just feel like that's just a better fit for Josh Sargent in this particular point in his career, and that he'll be used in a way that can maximize his potential. Whereas at Burnley, I think they'll be a little bit better than when he was up there with Norwich. But I just think it's going to be so structured. I don't think he's going to be able to. He's going to be handcuffed, right? He's not going to be able to fly like Josh Sargent can, as we've seen with him with the Canaries, as it were.
Yeah, well, with Burnley, they were great defensively, and I think if they're going to survive in the Premier League, that's how they're going to survive, right? And I feel like we saw this story already with Josh Sargent with Norwich. Go up, but in his case, it was a team that scored goals. You go up, and we're starting to see this disparity between the teams that come up now and the teams that are in the Premier League already. And it's really difficult for teams to survive now because of the money and the roster build and all of that stuff. Of course, if you're Burnley, you have to, you've got to build something on the attacking side of things, right? But they have a formula potentially to stay. If they stay, it's not going to be like they stay in 10th place in the Premier League. On the other side, the thing I will say, I don't know much about the Wolfsburg manager. I read a little bit with one of the articles that was shared with us. What I will say, though, you have a new manager that's going to spend money to bring you in as an attacking player in their first go-around. It leads me to believe, like, this is a guy that I want, right? This is a guy that I think I could build around, and I need to. I'm scoring goals, but we're not scoring at the rate that we want to, and maybe this guy can put you over. I always think it's a good situation when it's a first-time manager coming in and you're his guy, which in general gives you like a year, right? It gives you a year and a half because they did bring you in. So that's the only thing I would add to what Chuck said before is that's the one thing that kind of sticks out to me is the timing of the move with the new manager.
But the lure of the Premier League, Chuck, it's hard. We've seen some of the best players.
He's already done it, Jimmy. He's already done it and been there, done that. But
he's done that in the Bundesliga as well with Werder Bremen.
No. But there's a big difference of going to the Prem, and we're seeing comments here. Hey, they have a better chance of winning a few games. Like, what do you mean? I don't want a better chance of just winning a few games in the Premier League coming up as a promoted team. For me, it's a clear and easy decision just based on playing time, the chances I'm going to get, the opportunities that are in front of me with a new manager versus the survival, where you're going to do more defending as a striker than you are in terms of getting on the end of crosses or getting in the box or getting passes to your feet. You are going to have to defend, and that's the hallmark of a Scott Parker team is everybody has to get in behind the ball. Everybody. And so again, as a striker, I'm not trying to go to a team where they want me to focus on defending first at all costs, at all times, after coming off a successful stint with Norwich here in the championship.
Hey, Jimmy, let me throw this at you real quick. Who has a better chance? So we're going into what, 25, 26. Who has a better chance a year from now of being in the first league in their Wolfsburg or Burnley? Right. Yeah, so my point is there's a potential, the way what we've been seeing with the Premier League is that Josh Sargent is playing in the championship a year from now too, where if you're at Wolfsburg, yeah, there might be a moment where you battle at the bottom, but like he's going to be in the Bundesliga, for a heck of a lot longer. And so it's something to think about with your future. Of course, he's thinking about, I got to get myself back into the national team, right? And I still think, even though he hasn't scored a goal in a long time, I still look at him as an option for us to make that World Cup roster.
Yeah, Corey's got a good comment here, too, that says, don't forget that Josh was played out of position in the Premier League that year for Norwich.
Played as a winger.
He played as a winger because Timo Pukki was pretty much the default number 9 for them. So hopefully for Burnley, he would get to play in that number 9 spot. Maybe that changes things. But ultimately, I agree with you. Wolfsburg were actually pretty solid to start last season in the Bundesliga. They were up to 5th after match day 13. So they were in the conversation. Then they fell off a cliff at the end. They had 3 draws and 6 losses to finish the season before eking out a 1-0 win against Borussia Mönchengladbach final match day to finish 11th mid-table. So there's a core of players that are good enough. And now with this new manager who I think is going to elevate them, I think they have a chance at least being a little bit more competitive, a little bit more consistently. Well, speaking of the Bundesliga and players in the Bundesliga, Tones, I'm coming to you on this one first. There have been reports, and LAFC is actually playing against Minnesota United tomorrow night. And I'm here. I'm going to go get dinner with Steve Cherundolo tonight, so I'm excited to see my old buddy Sven. But there's some reports that his team, LAFC, are maybe in the mix for Gio Reyna. Do you think that's a good fit for let's start with Gio first, Big Tones, especially given that Mauricio Pochettino has shown that it doesn't matter where you play, you just need to be playing, as evidenced by, let's say, Diego Luna is probably our best example of, like, if you're playing well and doing good things, I'm going to call you in and give you a chance. Do you think this is a good opportunity for Gio Reyna to resuscitate his national team career?
Well, it shows a lot of things, right? That he can't find a spot in Europe where someone says, hey, you're a starter here. In that midfield, remember, they have Mark Delgado. They have that Jesus who came in, who's a defensive midfielder, so he's not going to replace him. And then they got Timothy Tillman, right? And he's battling with Malik Tillman on the national team for attacking positions, right? So, yeah, will he play? I'm sure he will. I'm sure if he comes back to MLS, that's going to be a real discussion with whoever the manager is. In this case, that would be Steve Cherundolo for a little while at least. But Gio needs to play, period. If you can't find anything in Europe, you got to come back. Like, I would prefer that he doesn't come back, that he finds a home that says, yeah, you're our guy, right? You're going to play here. But Jimmy and Chuck, I got to imagine whoever, I forget who his agent is, but I know he changed over the last year. They're exhausting everything in Europe right now. They're trying to find a place and a home for him in Europe. And it's maybe telling, right? Or it is telling if he can't find a place at the moment.
I wonder what's maybe holding that up. Is it a transfer fee or whatever it is?
I don't know.
Salaries in general. Yeah, there could be a lot of different reasons. So
yeah,
we'll get more info as time passes. But Chuck, let's keep it kind of on LAFC. LAFC for me are a counterattacking team, right? They put themselves in good positions, and then can they spring Bouanga? And then that's kind of where their attacks generate from. I don't even know if Gio would be a good fit.
Olivier, just ask Olivier Giroud how that went. It depends where they see him too. I don't see him as a winger in that team because, like you said, Bouanga is the main man. So you're playing him into space, you're playing to his feet, and it's go, transition. And that's not Gio Reyna's game. If you're talking about a possession-based team, that's not their that's not their style. This isn't a team that likes to keep the ball and slow the game down, where then Gio Reyna can operate and get a lot of touches. So I don't think this is the right team for him. If he comes to MLS, which, like Tony said, that's telling that there's not an Eredivisie club, outside of PSV that are an Ajax that are saying, hey, we'd love Gio to come in and be our playmaker. We keep the ball. We see him thriving here. Even a Como, for instance. If these clubs aren't coming in for him and you're forced to go back to MLS because you need the guaranteed playing time, then I wouldn't necessarily choose LAFC. If you have the option to pick a club in MLS, that's not the club I'm going to based on the style of play.
Right. I think maybe made this suggestion a while back, but Columbus Crew I thought would be a nice fit for him. Wilfred Nancy, obviously. Columbus Crew would be a nice fit for a lot of players that want to try to maximize their potential. I'm a huge Wilfred Nancy fan. And
where else, Jimmy? I think he'd fit. I think he'd fit in Houston. Ben wants to play through the midfield. Remember 2 years ago when he had that box of 4 players, he lost Ache in the midfield, right? But he wants to play. And he would go in there and obviously be the man in the midfield, or one of them in the midfield. So like there's teams like that he could go to. But I'm just surprised. I really am that I don't know. I don't know if I'm the only one here, but I'm just surprised that he hasn't found a team in Europe, which is, as we said, it's telling, man. Really telling on how people think, or it's telling on what their expectations are for Gio and where they think he fits, and it clearly doesn't match up with what the people in Europe think about where he fits.
Yeah, it makes me wonder about his reputation behind the scenes, because it doesn't seem like it's as high as we'd all like it to be, because we just want to see him play, right, Chuck? We just want to see him get on the field and make it happen. And I wonder if he's like, I don't want to play for that club. I'm sure there's an element of that too, but you know, at some point you have to just reconcile that this is just kind of where you are at the moment, and it could be one step back for two steps forward.
Don't you think, like, if Gio goes to LAFC, I'm sorry, and he starts playing, like, he's probably not happy about coming back to MLS. I can understand that. But when he starts playing and they start winning games and he's playing a lot, don't you think he's inevitably just going to start being happy?
Yeah,
happy,
yeah.
like you're going to enjoy it, like, or you can enjoy just sitting on the bench all the time and going to a Club World Cup and playing 12 minutes. And I don't know. I understand there's a money factor, and I would never discard that. If someone does it for money, that's your choice. That's fine. But I don't know. I just think he'll eventually grow into being happy if he's on the field, because right now it's got to eat you alive every night.
Yeah, I see Ivis in the chat. He's saying, hey, Gio Reyna back to New York City FC, his hometown club where he was in the academy there. Not a bad shout. Even Red Bulls or New York City FC. I could see him. Yeah, but I could see him being home and finding the love of the game again. You know, just playing week in, week out. You know, I think that will do a lot for him. And then if you find your confidence, we all know anything's possible at that point.
Yeah, and Ryan makes a good comment too. Luca de la Torre left a situation in La Liga to go to Celta de Vigo, and he comes to San Diego FC, gets himself back into the national team because he wasn't getting called in previously, and now he's parlayed that into being part of the conversation. Whether he makes the final roster, obviously yet to be determined, but at least he's in the conversation. Right now, I feel like Gio is on the outside looking in, and if he's not playing, that's going to remain the same way. Yeah, really interesting times for him in particular, but yeah, we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. Okay, we're going to take our last break of Call It What You Want. When we come back, we learned some things from the Club World Cup. We have some big takeaways there. A shout out to Chelsea, who were immense in their first half against PSG. They won that game 3-0. But we'll get into that and a little bit more right after this.
Critics agree Leadman is a hit.
We roll the dice one last time.
Men die. Oil companies don't.
Yeah, welcome back in to Call It What You Want. I'm Jimmy Conrad alongside Charlie Davies and Tony Meola. And we have some takeaways from the Club World Cup, which you strip away all the other, well, whatever you want to talk about, ticket prices when it was, because I don't think it should have ever been competing against a regional tournament like the CONCACAF Gold Cup. They never would have done it for the Euros or Copa America, but here we are. And there are some successes. Obviously, there's going to be some plus or minuses. But I thought it was a nice audition for what hosting the World Cup next summer is going to be. Logistically, the heat, location, all that type of stuff. And we got into a big conversation off camera in our production meeting earlier this week. And Chuck, you were you played hooky on that particular meeting, so I'm going to come to you first. But what's interesting is in the 1994 World Cup, that summer in the United States was actually hotter than this summer for the Club World Cup, but yet everybody's now complaining about the heat and it's going to be unplayable and so on and so forth. And I find that to be pretty interesting because the crowd still came out. It was still a really enjoyable tournament for a lot of different reasons. And you still want to have player care in the consideration. You want to make sure that the guys are in a position to play at the highest level possible. And we could argue teams are playing more games than ever before leading into a World Cup than they were in the past. But I don't know if the heat should be as big of a factor as it is. But what are your thoughts overall on the Club World Cup?
I thought to begin with, going into the tournament, I was like, this is going to be a disaster. Players are going to be super tired. They made this bigger than it had to be. Competing tournaments, conflicting, comments from managers dealing with the heat and the tired players. But in the end, I think it was a huge success. I think it maybe started a little bit slow, and people got into it, and I think PSG was really entertaining everybody, and people were following along. Can Luis Enrique continue to do this? Because this is probably going to have a large hand in the Ballon d'Or when it's all said and done, and who is kind of leading the race now, given their performances here in the Club World Cup. But I think this was successful. I think it shows that the country's now really starting to gravitate towards the sport with everything that was going on this summer. I was a fan of it in the end. I saw all the kids watching it and loving, learning about different clubs in the world, which is always great, and different players. So I think for me, it was well done, well executed final. And, it was good for everybody to get a taste of what the summer looks like in the United States, what the pitches look like, what the fan environment looks like. So it was a good run. Instead of a Confederations Cup, we had a Club World Cup, and I think it was a success.
Yeah, hopefully everybody becomes smarter and more efficient as we walk into the World Cup next summer and have some good learnings there. I think what's interesting, Tones, is that Chelsea's Levy Colwill, their young center back, after winning the tournament, maybe it's easier to say this from a winning position after you win it, but he thinks this is going to be the most important competition moving forward. And there's something about it that I love, which is that every single part of the planet is involved, right? Right now, it seems like the Champions League is the creme de la creme of these club tournaments. But now when you open it up, I thought it was really refreshing to see that Brazilian sides, the Argentinian sides, MLS side, like everybody's part of it. Mexican sides are all in there with a chance to have a crack at it. And I know this will only happen every 4 years, but I can kind of see where Colwill was coming from. And obviously the Champions League's every year. But what are your thoughts overall on the World Cup?
Well, I think obviously it looks like we're going to have it every 4 years. Word is that it might come back here to the U.S. Chelsea, remember, Maresca was complaining 2 weeks ago about the tournament. I don't know if he's complaining about I'm just did a quick search here. It looks like they won 114, almost 115 million. 115 million in prize money. So when you think about teams wanting to be in this tournament, right? What did LAFC? They won the 10 million and almost 10 million after that. Inter Miami, like 20 something million for this tournament. You know what that means for clubs.
The players.
Yeah, and I know there was a fight in Seattle about how much everyone's going to make, and they'll sort that all out. But it looks like we're going to have this every 4 years. And you mentioned Champions League, and remember, there's two big differences between Champions League and between this competition, and it has nothing to do with the fact that Champions League is every year. It has to do with Champions League is run by UEFA, who's making most of the money. Right. FIFA runs the Club World Cup. Right. And I saw some astronomical numbers last night in an article I was reading about how much FIFA made it this World Cup. And let's face it, in the end, FIFA needs to make money on these teams. And yeah, the schedule sucks for the players with regards to where it comes. But you'll see teams fighting and fighting. Can you imagine? I have to go look at what Fluminense made in the tournament. For a Brazilian club to make that much money. Yeah. It could run their academies by players. Like it may not mean that the 115 certainly doesn't mean as much to Chelsea as maybe like 50 million means to one of these South American clubs. So it's here to stay. I would think we're going to see it every 4 years.
Yeah, and it's only going to get better, right? And more competitive, because to your point, everybody's going to be trying to get in. I think it's just funny that Chelsea got into the tournament winning the Champions League in 2021. That's how much time you have to qualify for these particular tournaments, which is kind of fun at the same time. So Johnny Infantino, Chuck, there's been some obviously questions about the heat, and he had a comment recently about the covered stadiums. He said this: "Of course, the heat is an issue. Last year at the Olympic Games in Paris, games during the day and all sports took place in very hot conditions. Cooling breaks are very important, and we will see what we can do. But we have stadiums with roofs, and we will definitely use these stadiums during the day next year." Now, that's true. There are going to be a few stadiums. You have Mercedes-Benz in Atlanta, AT&T Stadium in Dallas, NRG Stadium in Houston. SoFi in LA is a canopy roof with open sides for natural ventilation, but it also has air conditioning capabilities. So about 30% of the 104 scheduled matches for the Men's World Cup are going to be happening. About 31 games are going to be taking place in stadiums with roofs. That's not going to be enough to, I think, cover what Gianni Infantino is saying, or at least trying to intimate.
But it helps.
It does.
It does help. I mean, Tony, how hot were the games you played in that you actually remember being like, this is hot? Or did they all feel the same? Do you even think about
Columbia game in LA at the Rose Bowl in the middle of the day? That was a scorcher, man. They were spraying like with fire hoses into the stands, it was crazy. But I looked at, I had that thing I sent you guys yesterday about the temperatures on the finals. I saw this the day of the finals, though. New York was 82 degrees, London was 86, Paris was 84, and Madrid was 89 degrees. Like, so it's hot everywhere. It's just the time of the year. And keep in mind, we had that little heat wave that you're not always going to count on in that Northeast. Actually, it was more from the central part of the East Coast all the way up to the Northeast, which just happened during the Club World Cup. Miami, down in Dallas is covered. I mean, it's going to be hot in places. It is what it is, man. And I saw Gianni Infantino's note also about the Olympics, right? And the fact that the Olympics were played in scorching hot, weather as well. So it's going to be hot. There's no doubt about it. I tend to lean towards the Thomas Muller comment, like, hey, I'm 37, like, go deal with the heat, or whatever he said. I'm 35. I forget how old he is, but he said, go deal with the heat and get yourself in shape for it. I think in the beginning, players were maybe miserable about the tournament. I think the World Cup is going to be a little bit different.
Yeah, ultimately, I agree with those sentiments, and there's still a lot of positives from the Club World Cup. And to your first point, Chuck, was better than I thought it was going to be. I just didn't know how the teams were going to approach it, how serious some of the bigger clubs were going to approach it. But then, we were players once. So once you start competing, you want to compete and you want to make the most of, like, if we're going to be here, let's just get after. Yeah, that money too. You know who else?
I'll tell you right now, Inter Miami, when they came to play New England, I was talking to a couple of players. They said that check was serious. That bonus check was serious. So yeah, you can imagine, playing in that as from an MLS perspective, when some of these guys are not on high salaries, and next thing you know, you see a check come in, and you go, "Oh boy, now I know why we want to play in this competition."
Yeah, and the way they got in was awesome because Gianni Infantino said, "You guys are in." Let's talk about
they made over 20 million, Jimmy.
I know.
21 million. So even if you split it 50-50 with the owner, I don't know what they did, right? Just say you split it, you're getting a check for like $300,000 to $400,000 for the tournament. Like if that's I don't know that they did that, but I'm just thinking like that would be fair, right? But yeah, that's what you'd be getting.
How does Miami get to use that as it pertains to salary cap? Do they? I don't even know how that works. Maybe this is a new.
Well,
I think they're going to use it on Rodrigo de Paul.
It sounds like they're going to splash it on an enforcer midfield.
Yeah, that's probably good choice, Chuck.
Once they took out into Miami's bodyguard from stuff, they had to go buy one because Rodrigo de Paul is definitely Messi's bodyguard. But let's talk about a player that did get a winner's check, or I assume he did. Gaga Slonina. There's been some names like I assume he won.
He was dancing on the field, man. Did you see him after the game? Yeah, I loved it. Yeah.
I wonder how much money he is going to end up netting here. And do we know where he's going to go, Big Tones? He's just
back from he's back from that hand injury now. It took a little while to get back. No, I'm interested. I suppose we'll find out here shortly, right, in this transfer window. There was a rumor that they were going to keep him at Chelsea and have him as the third goalkeeper there, which would likely mean he's playing in the reserve games. But I don't know. But apparently they like him. They like him quite a bit.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. His situation for me, and we'll use him as an example, Chuck, because there's a lot of players, right, that maybe sign with big clubs or have in the past, and then they just get kind of buried, and then it must be cool to say, hey, I play for Chelsea or I play for Man City or I play for whoever, Arsenal, but I'm not getting minutes.
Barcelona B,
Yeah, right. But but then how do you break out of that? And then all of a sudden, let's use Barcelona, and they go sign another top goalkeeper, and you're like, okay, cool. Where's the path forward for me? Or maybe they don't believe in me as much as I thought. What's my next move? It's really
Jimmy,
tricky.
no,
I understand
Jimmy,
the romanticism of Europe, and not to say that's any easier the path in MLS, but man, it gets really tricky for some of these situations.
Well, it's much harder in Europe than it is MLS. The paths are nowhere near the same. The difference is, if you go to Europe, you're betting on yourself. And the bigger the club, the more competition there is. So when you're talking about Chelsea's and Barcelona's and Real Madrid's and these type of clubs, do you remember Chelsea when Jose Mourinho was there? When you look at Manchester City with Pep Guardiola, we're talking about world-class players, multiple world-class players in the same position. That's who you're competing with every week to play. That's the difference. So it's I'm going to a club because I want to win, but I also want to see how far I can go. Can I start in a team like this? They're spending 50 to 100 million on me, and you're not guaranteed to start. That's the reality of the situation. If you want to play on especially a club like Real Madrid or Barcelona, you may go there. Like they were trying to sign Nico Williams. What does that mean for Rafinha? He was arguably a top 3 player in the Ballon d'Or, and you're adding a player in his position to play. And Rafinha is not saying there to go, oh, I'm going to come off the bench. And Nico Williams isn't going to Barcelona to come off the bench. So that's the type of competition that you're going to get at the highest levels. Now, if we're talking about Chelsea for Gaga Slonina, how realistic was it for him to start in the next 5 years after he was signed from the Chicago Fire? Not realistic at all. It takes time. And we're seeing goalkeepers now extending their primes, to the late 30s. So with all the experience that comes with that, Gaga Slonina was always going to either A, stay and play on the reserves, or B, get loaned out to smaller clubs that Chelsea ownership group owns, right? And that's the easy way. Or you're playing in League One. You're not even the championship. So I think for Gaga Slonina, it's just finding a good spot where he's going to play every week. Eredivisie, top division. I would love for him to find a top division club somewhere in Europe where he's playing week in and week out. We saw him when he went to Belgium. He played on a team that was getting shelved. I mean, he had basically no back line. Probably not best for your development. Of course, there's pros and cons to that. The resilience, you got to stay mentally sharp. Your team's going to be leaking goals left and right. But I think you grow from that experience. It's not an experience you go back to. So, it's tough because you want to push yourself, but at the same time, you want to be in good spots in a good environment.
Jimmy, they have 5 goalkeepers, just to shed light on that situation real quick. The 19-year-old Penders, it looks like they're about to loan him out. He had already been to Genk on a loan last year, came back, but it looks like he's going back. Robert Sanchez is obviously the number 1 guy. Georgi Petrovic is there, obviously New England. Yeah, and
he's going to Brentford.
Yeah, so he's out the door. So right now it leaves Sanchez is the number 1, another Philip Jorgensen and Gaga Slonina as the 3 guys left on Chelsea's roster. So that's kind of what the battle is, right? For Gaga Slonina. But I'm just happy he's back because that hand took a heck of a long time to heal whatever it was, because I don't really know exactly what the extent of it was.
And remember, it's tough for Petrovic. Was one of the best keepers in Ligue 1 last season on loan from Chelsea. I thought he impressed the year before at Chelsea, but of course, for whatever reason, they didn't like him. And now he is going to Bournemouth, to play with Tyler Adams. But again, it's all about preference. And if they like Gaga Slonina, which apparently they do, and it's good to see he's back and he's healthy and he's at least in the training there with the first team. What is his best way forward? Is it to stay and just wait for your chance? Is it to go on loan again to an uncertain situation? Sometimes it may be best just to be there with the goalkeeper coach, still be around the first team because he's still so young, versus just being put in a bad situation.
Yeah, I find the whole thing interesting because when you look at it from Gaga's perspective, I mean, the status that comes for signing with Chelsea, is immense, right? You're a Chelsea player. You're part of the club. I mean, what a move, right? And that's a dream. And I'm sure he's uttered those words in some ways. And then the money you're getting. So from a financial perspective, a status perspective, you're ticking all the boxes there. But from a playing perspective, from a competitive standpoint, he was the guy at Chicago Fire. And I feel like we could see his progress, right? You called all those games, Tone, so you got to see it firsthand. But you could see like he was making this progress. Like, this is going to be the guy for the U.S. at some point. We don't know yet, but it's going to happen at some point. And now he just gets lost in the wilderness. So from a strictly competitive standpoint, do you feel like it just would have been better for him to stay with the Chicago Fire? I know hypothetically this is where I want to go, but knowing and trying to leave the status and financial aspect out of it. Just
you can't leave it out of it. You can't leave it.
I know, but I'm trying my very best, Chuck.
Yeah, no, I still think even if you leave that out of it, because there was a plan for him when he left Chicago, right? The plan was that he, like Chuck alluded to, he wasn't going to play at Chelsea. The plan was just like a Miazga when Miazga went there. The plan was, let's loan him out, let's see what he can do, and if he can play, we'll keep him. If he can't play, we got to move him on, right? That's exactly what they did, and that was the plan. Remember, they spent $20 million on him. So it's not like they didn't spend any money, like he was free to go. Right. They spent money on him, and I still think he eventually is the national team goalkeeper. I know everyone looks at Diego Cochin. I think Cochin, who I think signed again in the same position that he's in right now for next season, he needs to find first team football at some point. I get you're at Barcelona. He plays. He's sometimes on the bench. He plays in the second team. But eventually you got to be the guy that's going. If you're a goalkeeper, we're not like you guys, man. You can play with two forwards. You can play with two center backs, like you only got one chance.
And we get the sub in,
you get the sub in. And if you raise your hands, I'm tired, coach, you get to get a change, all that stuff. And, that doesn't happen in this position. You have to find the right situation for yourself. But again, like I said, I'm just happy he looks fit. He looks strong. I know he was kind of jumping around, but you could see in his face like he looks fit, and happy that he's not injured.
All right, so one last thing that I want to bring up before we let everybody go. I had the opportunity to go to the Minnesota United San Jose Earthquakes game this past weekend, and I love, if you're going to go travel to any MLS stadium, I would put the one here, Minnesota United, high up the list. Allianz Field is immense, and it's a great place to watch a game. And the fans are great. And I'm here with Target for the USA Cup, the biggest youth tournament in North America. That's shameless plug alert. We gave Chuck his time at the beginning of the show. I'm going to take it here at the end. But a lot of fun to be here and getting a lot of compliments about people listening to and watching. Call it what you want. But what I thought was interesting, and Minnesota United won that game 4-1. But I talked to Manny Lagos, who works with the club and was one of my teammates in San Jose way back when. They only started one American, Minnesota United. They've had a tremendous season under Eric Ramsey, one of the top young managers in MLS, and done a nice job, very organized on both sides of the ball, and were very good and took their chances very well against the Earthquakes, unfortunately, for Bruce Arena and his staff. But I thought one American, and it's Will Trapp, who's sitting in the middle of midfield. He's the captain for Minnesota. I just didn't think about it till afterwards when Manny brought it up. He's like, yeah, we only start one American. And I'm like, that just opens up a big conversation, Chuck, about, and I kind of use Gaga Slonina in the conversation that we have, a little bit of a segue of, okay, even if Americans are here, doesn't mean they're necessarily going to play, right? And I wonder when does that start to get brought into the conversation a little bit more? I know that we've had it, but I once it was right in front of my face, I just was really marveling at the lack of American presence.
You can make that argument anywhere in the world, Jimmy.
Yeah.
People want to win. And MLS in particular, you're talking about competing with the world's best leagues. They're on this path of, we want to be a top 10. We want to be a top 5. Well, with money comes talent, and talent that's not here. So you have to develop talent. And there's only a handful of clubs that will play more Americans than not. And Philadelphia Union is one of those clubs who has an incredible academy system. But now you're starting to see it's harder and harder to break through and get minutes on the first team, because you're bringing in talent who will at younger ages. So now you're looking at it from a business standpoint, from a business perspective. If we can sign more talented young South American kids who now will look at MLS as a pathway forward to use it as a springboard to get into Europe, guess what? We're making more money selling a young Argentine kid versus a young American kid. And the upside has been pretty good. I mean, so now for young Americans, which for me goes into the same conversation of when we look at the Gold Cup roster, we're saying, where the hell are wingers? Look in MLS teams. I was going through which wingers do we have? What does that player pool even look like? What does that consist of? And if you have to go to the U17 national team or U20 in some cases to go, okay, there's some wingers here, but none that are actually playing every week in MLS and coming up with goals and assists. So I think it's a much bigger conversation of of player development and getting that right and continuing to develop players and giving them the opportunity to play and make something of themselves, which is why we're seeing some of our young talent go to Europe right away. They're going as soon as they can.
There's a lot of levels to the conversation for sure, and I probably shouldn't have brought it up at the end of the show, but I do want to get your thoughts quickly on it.
Good job.
Big Tones. And also Ivis dropped in our private chat that only 4 Americans started in kind of MLS's marquee matchup this past weekend, Inter Miami versus Nashville SC. Only 4 Americans combined starting in that one. And I wonder, I guess we won't know for 20 years out, Big Tones, about how much maybe that's stifled the American player if there's not a clear path. But of course, if they're good enough, they're going to play. So we just got to figure out a way to make them good enough.
Jimmy, I call games every single weekend, and I say the same thing to myself all the time. I was actually off this weekend. You mentioned Seattle, for me, is the one team that consistently stays near the top of the table that has, I think, I'd have to do the math, but I think they've got the most Americans, right? They've got Jordan Morris. They've got Jesus Ferreira that played this weekend. Christian Roldan, his brother is not American. Jackson Reagan. So they do Paul Rothrock. I think they had 5 Americans on the field, and they stay at the top of the table. But there aren't very many teams. If you look at the LAFCs, if you look at the Galaxy, you look at all the teams that over the last couple of years have had success, none of the rules are made for Americans. It's hard to get an American DP in the league. You got an under 22 initiative, generally isn't for American players. It's getting harder and harder for American players to get into these rosters, but you got to fight, right? You got to fight to be in that where you want to be. That's a good thing.
Yeah. We'll make this a topic of a bigger show. We'll get some guests on and we can really hit it from all angles. But I just wanted to bring that up because I lived it in real time this past weekend. All right, we're going to take – well, that's it. We're calling it a show ultimately. But,
I was going to say, where are you going?
No, there's no more breaks. That was a tease. But we're actually going to take a bit of downtime in July. So we're going to be live with you guys on Tuesdays. Thursdays will be more some YouTube videos. So keep it here on the Golazo America YouTube channel just so we can get a breather after a lot of shows during the Gold Cup, and that we'll have a nice – just like everybody else after the Club World Cup. We're going to take a nice breather before we ramp up again for the European season and, of course, the big friendlies that are coming up. So we appreciate your support. Keep it here on the Golazo America channel.
Yes.
We will, we'll be hanging out with you. We're going to be live again next week at the same time, 10 a.m. Eastern, and then we'll be dropping some fun content for you up until then. So thanks for hanging out with us. Appreciate it. Have a great week. We'll see you soon. Later.